Welcome back. Number 26. Do not accept offerings for yourself alone. If a disciple of the Buddha living in a particular temple, a house, a city, a temple built by the king, or a place where a 3-month retreat is being held, or in quarters used by a great assembly, sees bhikkhus or bodhisattvas enter. This is the secondary precepts that we're using, that we're reading. Part 2, the Buddha's secondary precepts. He and any others already in that place must rise to greet the guests and finally see them off well. This is the mode of conduct that's required to be followed by the bodhisattva. They must provide the guests with whatever they need: food and drink, lodging, bedding, wooden beds, cushions, and so forth. If they have nothing to give them, then they should be willing to supply them with all the essentials, whatever required. As guests, should treat guests well, treat them with reverence and respect, provide them with the provision that they require, even if it means selling their own body or that of their son or daughter. Or cutting off their flesh and selling it. Furthermore, if a lay person extends an invitation to the assembly, the monks who are guests should receive a share of the offerings. This is something set down by the Buddha some 2,500 years ago. But cutting flesh and all that sort of stuff, I don't think is applicable today. But the abbot must make sure that they receive them in accordance with the proper order. If only those who are already living in a particular place receive the offerings and prevent the guests from partaking of them, the abbot will accumulate innumerable evils. The abbot is a person accommodating the guests, or the caretaker, or the person offering the provisions. He should be considered as no different from an animal. He is not a true monk or a disciple of the Buddha. To commit such a misdeed is to break a secondary precept and commit a defiling offense. In those days, these things must have been happening. They must have happened. And that's the reason it's become a precept. Precept number 26. We move on to precept number 27. Do not accept an invitation for yourself alone. A disciple of the Buddha must never receive an invitation for himself alone, or enjoy the benefit of what is offered just by himself. The benefits of any offering belong to all the Sangha of the direction, whatever offerings received. Thus, to accept anything for oneself alone means to keep what rightfully belongs to the Sangha. It belongs to the Sangha, and you should share it with the Sangha. You should share it with a community of Buddhas. Rightfully belongs to the Sangha of the 10 directions. To take the use for oneself any article belonging to one of the 8 fields of blessing, that is, a Buddha, an Arahat, a Vinaya, preceptor, a Dharma teacher, the community of monks, one's father, one's mother, or sick person, results in breaking a secondary precept. Keeping it for yourself. So there we go. And by keeping it for yourself is breaking a precept and committing a defiling offense. Which brings us on to precept number 28. Do not make individual invitations to monks when a disciple of the Buddha, whether he is a bodhisattva who has left the householder's life, a householder, bodhisattva, or an ordinary lay person, intends to make a vow to invite the community of monks, which is a field of blessing. Then he should go to the monastery and tell the person in charge that he has made such a vow and intends to issue such an invitation. You should go to the monastery and say this to the head monk or whatever. He should also inquire as to the proper means to go about his task. The person in charge should then reply that the monks must be invited in. They should also be invited in accordance with the proper order. The Buddha set all this down some 2,500 years ago for the Sangha to follow, for the community of monks to follow, to a T, precisely to a T. For in this way, he will receive noble monks from the 10 directions. Even if someone were to invite separately 500 arhats or monks who are bodhisattvas, this would not compare with inviting some ordinary monks in accordance with the proper order. To make individual invitations is the way of outsiders. In other words, it's not the way of the Sangha. For the 7 Buddhas, there exists no law for making individual invitations. To do so is not the way of true devotion. Thus, deliberately to invite a monk individually is to break a secondary precept and commit a defiling offense. Very subtle. Something set down by the Buddha. There must have been difficulties experienced by the Buddha in those days. And so the Buddha set this down as a precept in the number 26. Do not hold an unwholesome occupation. This is number 29, precept number 29. A disciple of the Buddha must not, with evil intention for the sake of gain, engage in such occupations as selling physical charms of men and women, preparing food with his own hands, pounding grains with a pestle or grinding them in a mill, telling fortunes by looking at a person's physiognomy. Physiognomy meaning the face. Fortune telling by looking at the face of people. This is prohibited. Interpreting dreams. Now, it's a breaking of a precept. Interpreting dreams, predicting the sex of a child, making use of spells and magic, performing tricks in order to deceive others, domesticating hawks. It means putting hawks in a cage, preparing any kinds of dangerous drugs, or concocting poisons out of gold, silver, or the venom of insects. Now, this is all a no-no, since such occupations are contrary to a mind of compassion and devotion. To engage in them deliberately results in breaking a secondary precept. I don't think those things happen nowadays. But in those days, it may have happened and it's become a precept. Well, it's a breaking of a precept and committing a defiling offense. Which brings us to precept number 30. Pay respect to the proper times and do not interfere with the lay people. A disciple of the Buddha should not, with evil intent, pretend to revere the three jewels while in fact reviling them. Proclaim that things are empty, but show a grasping at existence in his actions. Moreover, one must not interfere with lay people. Mind your own business. Bodhisattva should mind their own business, so that men and women would assemble with the result that they commit improper sexual acts or form a variety of attachments and bonds. One must not influence them so that they kill living creatures on the 6 specified fasting days and during the 3 special months of abstinence. There are 3 months of abstinence. You never kill animals during that time. During the 3 special months of abstinence and care, or that they interrupt the period of abstinence, commit such acts as theft, or that they transgress any of the precepts. If a bodhisattva were to interfere in such a way, it would result in breaking a precept. Well, obviously, it would result in the breaking of a secondary precept and committing a defiling offense. With an attitude of respect, one must learn the above 10 precepts well. This is what the Buddha wants you to do, or wants the bodhisattvas to do, or a disciple to do. Adhere to them and uphold them. They are explained clearly in the chapter. Restraints. There's a chapter that Buddha has given us. It's called Restraints. Which brings us to the 31st precept. Pay ransom and rescue people from their difficulties. The Buddha said, if in this evil world which exists after the nirvana of the Buddha, a disciple of the Buddha should see an outsider, a wicked person, or a thief selling images of the Buddha, bodhisattvas or their parents, trading in sutras or books of Vinaya, or having sold bhikkhus or bhikkhunis, bodhisattvas who have given rise to the mind of enlightenment, or men of the way, making them become slaves or the servants of government officials. Then with the compassionate mind, he must use all possible skillful means in order to rescue them. Wherever one goes, one must teach and transform others and try to raise, well, the money required or the money needed to redeem the images. The images of the Buddha, the images of the Bodhisattvas and so on. To redeem the images, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas and the sutras and Vinaya texts, and to rescue the bhikkhus, bhikkhunis and bodhisattvas who have given rise to the mind of enlightenment. I don't think that happens nowadays though. But it's one of the precepts. To fail to do so results in breaking a secondary precept and committing a defiling offense. One's required to do so. But there are so many, I don't think. Anyway, it's fine. Which brings us on to precept number 32. Do not cause harm to sentient beings. A disciple of the Buddha must not sell swords, clubs, or bows and arrows, or should he use uneven balances or inaccurate weights and measures. One must not use one's influence with government officers to deprive others of their possessions with harmful intent, having others bound or shackled, undo the achievements of others, or breed domestic wildcats, pigs, dogs, like creatures. To do such deeds deliberately is to break a secondary precept and commit a defiling offense. These things must have happened in those days. In the days of the Buddha. They must have happened. And that's the reason it's a precept, secondary precept. Which brings us on to precept number 33. Never even look at unwholesome things. A disciple of the Buddha must not with evil intent look at men or women who are quarreling or fighting, at army encampments, where armies are, where the camps are, at battles, or at violent disputes among thieves. One should not look at any of that. Give it no attention. This is what the Buddha says. He should not watch or listen to music being played with shells, drums, harps, mandolins, flutes, and similar instruments. Or should he watch dancing or listening to singing accompanied by a lute? One must not play such games as cards, go chess, drafts, dice, ball games, stone throwing and pitching. Pitching. Not sure what pitching is. Pitching arrows, pitching arrows into a pot. Moreover, one must not praise divination with the mirrors made of claws, yarrows, stalks, willows, twigs, priests, bowls, or skulls. I don't think that happens nowadays, but anyway, in those days it must have happened. And to do any of this was a breaking of the precept. One must never run errands for thieves. To perform any of these forbidden actions deliberately is to break a secondary precept and commit a defiling offense. I don't know. It may happen today. Doesn't know. But it brings us on to precept number 34. Never abandon the mind of enlightenment, even for a moment, while walking, standing, lying down, or sitting, during the 6 times of day and night. A disciple of the Buddha must familiarize himself with the precepts and keep them well. One must keep them as carefully as one would take care of a diamond. The precepts. See, Buddha puts a lot of importance on the precepts. As one would take care of a diamond, or hold on a raft with which one hoped to cross the ocean. Or as the bhikkhu who was bound by grass would not uproot the grass to free himself. This is the amount of energy the Buddha says you need to exert to protect the Dharma. One must always maintain faith in the Mahayana. And the Mahayana is the true word. That is, it is the word from the Buddha. Being aware that one is not yet a fully realized Buddha, whereas those who are Buddhas are fully realized. One must give rise to the mind of enlightenment and must not forsake this. You need to have your attention needs to be constantly focused on enlightenment, like the Buddhas of the past. And must not forsake this attitude even for a moment. To give rise even for a moment to the attitude of the Hinaya, or the outsider's results in a minor offense. Buddha says, be very careful of the Hinayana, all the outsiders, results in a minor offense. Which brings us to precept number 35. Make vows. A disciple of the Buddha must always make vows to be devoted to his parents and his teachers. One should vow to meet good teachers and virtuous friends, to study with them, always, and receive instructions on the sutras and the Vinayas texts of the Mahayana, as well as on the 10 initial stages. The 10 development, the 10 developmental stages, the 10 developmental stages, a big word, the 10 diamond stages of firmness, and the 10 grounds in order to develop a clear understanding and a practice which is in accordance with the Dharma, and to maintain firmly the precepts of the Buddha. This is a precept. Instead of allowing the precepts to disappear from one's mind for even an instant, one should prefer to lose one's body and one's life for a bodhisattva. Not to make such vows results in breaking a secondary precept and committing a defiling offense. Precept number 35. To remember. Bodhisattva to remember. The disciple to remember. Which brings us to precept number 36. Always make pledges when a disciple of the Buddha has committed himself to the 10 preceding great vows. He must maintain the precepts of the Buddha and make the following pledges. And these are the pledges that need to be made. I would rather this body be cast into a roaring fire, a deep pit, or onto a mountain of swords, than ever to vilify the sutras of the precepts of the Buddhas of the 3 periods by indulging in unchaste acts, evil acts, with the various beings of the opposite sex. These things must have happened in those days. It's become a precept. So, we continue with that precept. I would rather this body be wrapped around 1,000 times by a red-hot iron net than, having transgressed the precepts with my body, ever be clothed with garments offered by sincere lay people. I would rather eat with this mouth balls of red-hot iron and fire for 100,000 aeons than having transgressed the precepts in my speech, ever eat any food or drinks offered by sincere lay people. This is a precept. This is a vow. I would rather lay this body down on a sheet of red-hot iron surrounded by a wall of blazing fire than having transgressed the precepts, ever be seated on beds of cushions offered by sincere lay people. I would rather this body experience the suffering of being pierced by 300 spears for 1 or 2 aeons than having transgressed the precepts with my body, ever received any medicine from sincere lay people. I would rather this body enter a boiling cauldron and spend 100,000 aeons there than having transgressed the precepts with my body, ever make use of rooms, houses, forests, land, and so forth, offered by sincere lay people. I would rather have this body broken apart with an iron hammer and entirely reduced to powder than having transgressed the precepts with my body, ever receive respect and prostrations from sincere lay people. I would rather my 2 eyes be gouged out by 100 or 1,000 burning knives and spears than ever behold beautiful forms with a mind that has transgressed the precepts. This is a vow that's being spoken. I would rather my ears be pierced with 100,000 awls of 1 or 2 aeons than ever listen to pleasing sounds with a mind that has transgressed the precepts. I would rather my nose be severed by 100,000 knives than smell sweet fragrances with a mind that has transgressed the precepts. I would rather my tongue be lacerated with 100,000 knives than ever enjoy delicious foods with a mind that has transgressed the precepts. I would rather my body be hacked by pieces with a sharp axe than having transgressed the precepts. Enjoy what is pleasing to the touch. Moreover, I vow that all sentient beings will become Buddhas. For a bodhisattva not to make such pledges is to break a secondary precept and commit a defiling offense. This is a vow that's being taken by a bodhisattva. Which brings us to the precept number 37. Refrain from traveling in dangerous places. When a disciple of the Buddha is performing itinerant ascetic practices during the spring and autumn, when he is engaged in meditation, during the summer and winter, or when he is partaking in a summer rains retreat, he must always keep the following things with him. This is what he needs to keep with him during these periods of time. Willow branches for cleaning the teeth, soap, the 3 essential monk's robes, a water container, a bowl, a mat, a staff, an incense burner, a filtering cloth, a towel, a knife, a flint, a pair of tweezers, bedding, sutras, Vinaya texts, and images of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Whether a Bodhisattva is performing specific acts of itinerant ascetic practices, or whether he is simply traveling to places 100 or 1,000 li, which in those days they called it li, but it's miles or kilometers, away, he must have in his possession these 18 articles. The times for performing itinerant ascetic practices are from the 15th of the first month to the 15th of the third month, and from the 15th of the 8th month to the 15th of the 10th month. These are the times. During these 2 periods, the 18 articles should be considered as 2 wings of a bird that must never leave one's body. Every 15 days, while practicing itinerant ascetic practices, the ceremony of purification, uposatha, purification in Pali, must be conducted by the bodhisattvas who have recently given rise to the determination to realize enlightenment. On this occasion, the 10 major and 48 minor vows must, without fail, be recited before images of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. On the occasion of the ceremony of purification, a single person must recite the vows alone, no matter if he is the only person present or whether there are 2, 3 or 100 or 1,000 people attending. The reciter must be seated in a high place and those listening in a lower place. The reciter must be somewhat elevated when reciting these vows. Each one of them must wear the ceremonial robe, and the ceremonial robes called the kaseya, of 9, 7 or 5 panels. The summer rains retreat too must be conducted in strict accordance with the Dharma. While performing itinerant ascetic practices, one must avoid traveling in dangerous places. Such places would include an inhospitable country, a land governed by an evil king, a place where the ground is uneven, a place which is overgrown with vegetation, a place where there are lions, tigers and wolves. I don't think we have any of that nowadays. 2025. A place prone to floods, fires and gales. A remote road frequently by bandits, or a place where there are snakes and other such dangers. Such places should be avoided, not only while wandering around performing itinerant ascetic practices, but also during the period of the summer rains. This is when the rains fall. For 3 months it just continuously rained. Retreat, the summer rains retreat. To enter such places deliberately results in breaking a secondary precept and committing a defiling offense. Which brings us to precept number 38. Do not disregard the order of the high and low. A disciple of the Buddha must seat himself in the appropriate place, as dictated by the Dharma. The first to have received the precepts should be seated in front, and the last to have received them should be seated behind. The order of the seating is not to be determined according to age. Instead, whenever bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, kings, princes, eunuchs, slaves and the like are gathered, then they should seat themselves according to the order in which they have received the precepts. A very clear directive by the Buddha, very clear. Do not behave like the foolish outsiders who, taking no notice of either age or precedence, sit in no particular order. Moreover, do not follow the customs of the common soldiers or slaves. According to the doctrine of the Buddha, those who are first to receive the precepts should sit in the front, and those who are last should sit at the rear of the assembly. For a bodhisattva to disregard the correct order in which one should be seated is to break a secondary precept and commit a defiling offense. Which brings us to precept number 39. Cultivate merit and wisdom. In addition to transforming all kinds of sentient beings through teaching them the Dharma, a disciple of the Buddha must arrange for temples to be built, mountains, forests and land to be prepared for housing religious facilities, stupas to be erected, and places to be organized where the summer and winter meditation retreats can be carried out, and the way cultivated. The way, the Dharma, cultivated. These places need to be built. For the sake of sentient beings. Bodhisattvas should expound the sutras, the Vinaya and the precepts of the Mahayana. They should read and explain these texts whenever disease is rampant. They should read. When national crisis occurs, when thieves are about, or on the death of their parents and siblings, Vinaya preceptors and Dharma teachers, as well as on every 7th day from the 3rd to the 7th week, after their death. Likewise, they should read and explain them when an assembly of monks is gathered to chant on behalf of someone who has requested prayers to be said. When someone needs to be benefited in his daily life, when there is a fire or a flood, when a boat runs into a storm, or when someone is being troubled by the evil spirits of rivers, lakes or oceans. Moreover, they should be read and explained while one is suffering. And, well, when one is suffering, the negative consequences of one's evil deeds. This is one's evil deeds. Evil deeds when one is born in the 3 unfortunate realms, when encountering the 8 difficult conditions and the 7 heinous crimes, and when one is bound with handcuffs, manacles or ropes, or is set in a pillory. Furthermore, they should be read whenever greed, anger, ignorance and illness abound. This is a precept applicable in those days, but it's still applicable nowadays, I'd say. Especially for someone who has recently become a bodhisattva. Not to behave in this way results in breaking a secondary precept and committing a defiling offense. With an attitude of respect, one should learn well the above 9 precepts, adhere to them, and uphold them. Yeah, it's a precept. They are explained clearly in the chapter Altar of Brahma. There's further explanation. Which brings us to the precept number 40. Do not discriminate between those who come to receive the precepts. A disciple of the Buddha must not discriminate between those who have come to receive the precepts. Everyone must be able to receive them, whether they be a king, a prince, a minister, a government official, a bhikkhu, a bhikkhuni, a layman, a laywoman, a sensuous man or woman, a celestial in one of the 18 realms of Brahma, or a lord of the 6 celestial realms of desire, a person with no sexual organs, a hermaphrodite, a eunuch, slave, or any ghost or spirit. They must be instructed that the ceremonial robe, kaseya, they wear is to be dyed with a combination of colors in accordance with the Dharma. One must remove the original color of the cloth by dyeing the material with a mixture of blue, yellow, red, black and whatever other colors applicable. And so that brings us to the end of that precept. And until next time when we embark on the last 3 precepts, I hope you've taken something from this delivery and that you have an understanding of these precepts. Precepts that the Buddha has passed down to the Sangha, to the Bodhisattvas, to his disciples. And the Buddha has emphasized on quite a few occasions that not one iota of these precepts needs to be transgressed, that they need to be followed to a T. There's no flexibility in the precepts. And that observance of these precepts is obligatory, is mandatory. And so one needs to give it a very focused consideration, and follow it to a T, without any deviation whatsoever. So, until next time, when we complete part 3, which are the last 3 precepts, I'd like to wish you a good day. A good day, and stay safe.